this computer. Uh, Afternoon, everybody. My name is Patrick. I'm one of the pastors at Chapelgate, working in the area of mission. I'm very excited to do this interview today for you all to engage with what God is doing around the world. On Zoom with me today, I have a couple of friends who are going to introduce themselves, starting with our Greek church pastor partner. Here we go.
Okay, this is Giotis Kantartsis, or else Giotis Kantartsis. I am the pastor of the First Greek Evangelical Church here in Athens, Greece. I had the privilege to visit the church, your church, and preach in your church, and that was a great experience, at least as far as I'm concerned. We had several teams from Chapelgate coming and visiting us, so we feel that we are really connected.
That's great. And also with us is Dan Passarelli, one of our other pastors here.
Hey guys, I'm just grateful to have this chance to connect with Giotis again. So just looking forward to continuing to grow our friendship. So
awesome. All right, well, Giotis, what's going on in Greece? We got this global pandemic that has overtaken our world today, and it's impacting churches all over the world. What is happening on the ground there?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same, I guess, all over the globe, or it's becoming. Europe, one of the benefits that we have here was that things went really terribly in Italy. So we were able to be convinced that this is something serious, because the natural tendency is to say, okay, that's not going to happen. It's not going to be that terrible. It's not going to be that serious. But in a providential way, Italy is next door for us. And so it was really kind of a scary thing to see what's going on. And the good thing is that our government, which is kind of very unusual for a Greek government, took measures really ahead of time and really ahead of many other European countries. So, we're all locked down and locked in, and the churches are not operating. And, actually, 2 days ago, there was a restriction in going out. So you need to text a number to receive a permission so that you can then go outside. And, it's complicated. So far, we have about 700 cases, confirmed cases. They estimate that may mean about 10,000 out in the community.
Wow.
So that's the situation. And what they're trying to do is to postpone the growth of the curve. So it will become high, but the further you can push it back, they say the lower it will be. So we are waiting in a sense, like everybody else.
Yeah. How is this impacting the church? Like, are you guys meeting online? Are you allowed to gather together?
Yeah. No. We're not. There was this difficult decision that we had to take to decide to close the churches. Now, of course, they're closed by, like the government requires that. Of course, in Greece, there was this tension with the Greek Orthodox Church, which is the state church, and it's a very powerful church. And for the Greek Orthodox theology, you realize the idea of being able to worship God, in any place, wherever 2 or 3 people, or like even in the privacy of your room, this is totally foreign. So it was a very difficult thing for them to accept, and they were resisting and fighting it. So we closed our churches a Sunday before they were forced to close them by the decision of the government. So we don't worship. Of course, I go to church, and the associate pastor also goes to church. And so we have on Sunday mornings, last Sunday was the second Sunday that we had a virtual, so to say, like an online live stream. Of course, to be honest, and I don't know what you do, and don't take that as
Yep.
this is not anything, because I don't know. We're trying to avoiding giving the idea that we are reproducing a worship service.
Yeah.
So what we do on Sundays is very different than what we would do on a normal Sunday. So we're not broadcasting live like a worship service, me up in the pulpit and, things like that. So we don't do that. We are having a time to connect with our congregation. Of course, we open the scriptures. We have members, like we have a medical doctor who is an elder giving directions to people. And we have a counselor, which that was like the most popular thing, because there was this counselor, this lady who helped us deal how you live together for so long with your family, which is very interesting, because we're all locked in. What some techniques and what are some strategies, like exercising, which I don't. But anyway, but it was very interesting. So we are trying to connect with our people without, giving them the false impression that you can substitute. So for us, it's very important to lament. There were some people celebrating, saying, wow, we have technology now and everything's going to be fine. It is not. Seeing a church building empty on a Sunday morning, it's a sad thing. It's a sobering thing. And so we're lamenting. But at the same time, we're using technology, and it has been very useful, like what we do right now, to really be in some sort of a communication and contact with our people. So that's as far as, and also we tried something very interesting. We did on Wednesday night, and we're going to repeat it using a platform where you can have a lot of people together. We tried to do like a prayer meeting, which was kind of scary because it was quite public in a way. But it went really well, and people are, connected. But for us, we are praying hard to see what the Lord has in store for us. And one thing I think is very important is this. We are, I think you do the same thing, and like in our church calendar, this is Lent time. We're celebrating, we're going through the Lent. And in Greece, we use the word Sarakosti, which means 40 days. This is a translation. And the word Karadin, means 40 days. It's the number 40. And for me, I try to, draw out all the associations with Lent. We're talking about social distancing, and distance, it has to do with space, but also with time. That which is distant, it takes more time for you to reach. So I take this opportunity, that is an opportunity to slow down. And I think that is a spiritual discipline for us to slow down and really reflect. And our first reaction was to say, okay, let's be extra busy now and see how we can deal with that. And, now what we're trying to do is quieting down, using this opportunity to pray, fast, reflect, slow down, try to find a fuller meaning in the moment, not going after fast results. So I think there are a lot of spiritual dimensions to what we're going through.
Yeah,
I love that.
I can go on.
Yeah,
Perhaps you can ask a
I
question.
love that. I love that 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 way of looking at this as uh, something that forces us
Mhm.
to slow down. Um, I'm curious, Giotis, how so your situation and Chapelgate's are similar in that we're both larger established churches,
Mhm.
you know, been around for a while. Is there the new church plants, you know, with George and Alex and Tim and Monoshare, you know, what are some of the unique things those guys are facing, you know, being smaller, newer, or unique opportunities?
Yeah. First of all, challenges. They are facing way much more severe challenges because, I mean, not meeting with people, especially churches that they kind of, they don't have well-established congregations. And that is a big challenge for them. And some of them don't have the technology to go live stream. And, you know, so this is another challenge that they have. And also financially. It's a real challenge because all of these churches, they pay rent, they, you know, pay salaries, and now they don't have any sort of income, at least from the tithing from the congregation. And in Greece, especially in these new churches, it takes more time for people to really be that committed that, you know, no matter, you know, I mean, if the church is there or it is not, they will be committed in giving. So that is a challenge. But also, there are opportunities, definitely. A team was telling us, we had a Zoom call, all of us this morning, and Tim and Alex, who have planted a church in the anarchist community in Athens, they were telling us how many people from the anarchist community are calling them frustrated, you know, because they want to talk to somebody. We have experienced that during the 2008, 2009 crisis, the financial crisis. So we had people coming to church because, I mean, there was this particular guy who showed up like from out of the blue. And when I approached him and I said, okay, how come you decided to come to church? I mean, this guy had no connection. And he said, I was looking for a safe place. Like when everything was falling apart, I was looking for a safe place. And I felt, I mean, and he said I would never go to an Orthodox church because, you know, he didn't like it and whatever. But he said, you know, he remembered that he came once in a Christmas concert and he said, you know what, I remembered you. And I said, you know, I'll go there like a safe haven. So they experience that, people from the anarchist community calling them, because you realize this virus has no political affiliation and challenges everybody in a very deep level. And I think there is something which I found it fascinating. Now, if I, you know, just try to make a broader analysis, actually, only recently, I was invited to read and make some reflection on a book that Tim Keller just published through the internet, basically, How to Reach the West Again. I don't know if you have heard that, and this is, you know. So as I was reading this book, I mean, like there is this discussion, how I mean, do we reach out the West again? And one of the biggest challenges is that, I mean, it seemed that in the West, people no longer struggle with the basic existential questions, and primarily with the question of death. Because, you know, like, and if I was to talk to you a month ago, I would have said this, like that. So, you know what, pandemics and the, you know, plagues are like forgotten, and now, you know, most people live 80, 90 years, and death is something distant. So how do you share the gospel when people are not, dealing with death, are not afraid of death. But it's interesting how, like, this event brings the whole world back to this very fundamental question that it seemed that, at least in the affluent West, has, being marginalized. Now, again, it's very central. I mean, how do we deal with death? And we see, again, people coming to grips with that question. And I think that this crisis, brings to us. So there are a lot of false assumptions, or the other is the assumption of autonomy, of freedom. We all realize right now how deep, dependent we are, and that, like, we were thinking that we're free, so we're not. So I think with the crisis, we also have some opportunities that, it's in front of us to really use.
So how do you leverage those opportunities in light of the social distancing that you guys experience? So what does the day-to-day look like for you guys?
For us, I'll tell you, I mean, one of the primary challenges that we face as a church, we're not a huge church. For the Greek standards, we are simply like a large church. We're about, let's say, 300, 350 people average attendance. But one of the biggest challenges that we face as a church is community, building community. We are more like a cathedral. So we are at the center of the city. People live all over the place, and they come, worship, and then they go. So for us, this situation, like, one of the challenges is, okay, is it possible that God had to bring us apart, to tear us apart, so that he will bring us together? So for us, one of the key things that we're trying to do is this. So we do live stream, okay, but we realize that this is not community, this is not the church. So what we are trying to do is to have a program of phone calls. So we have a program that we started this week. We call it 2+3. And we take the clue from, Jesus's words that wherever 2 or 3 are gathered together, and many times we misuse this verse to think that God needs 2, even better 3, in order to be present, which of course God is present everywhere. But we play with these numbers, and we say, okay, we ask our people to commit doing 5 phone calls every week. 2 of people that they will choose themselves, no reason why, and 3 people that we will give them, and so, which is a lot of work, because like yesterday I spent like my entire day, just matching. Okay, so let's say, okay, Dan will call these 3 people, and it's really kind of, we are throwing these people in the water, because they don't really know. Many of them, they don't know well each other. So it's a challenge for them to call them. And what we hope is that once, by God's grace, this whole thing will be over, they will kind of try to find out who was this guy that, I was talking to him on the phone, or to hear on the phone. So that's like an initiative that we are putting together. We send a daily devotional to our members, again, trying to encourage them to reflect and spend time with the Lord, that, slowing down. So that's another thing that we are doing. And of course, we have some really unique challenges / opportunities. Like one of the most famous analysis about the growth of Christianity comes from Rodney Stark. He has written this book, The Rise of Christianity, and this, again, is a very popular book. And actually, I was quoting that book and that particular thing many times in my sermons. One of the things that he does, Rodney Stark is a sociologist. I don't know if he's still alive. When he wrote that book, he was not a believer. He was a sociologist trying to study the factors that contributed to this tremendous growth of Christianity from being a small, insignificant religious group in Palestine becoming the religion of the empire. So he was trying to identify sociologically what were the factors that contributed to that growth. So one of them came to faith. And he wrote a sequel, The Triumph of Christianity, which is pretty much the same kind of argument. And he was teaching, he was a research professor at Baylor University, which is a very interesting story. But that's the parenthesis closed. Let's go back to the book. So one of the factors that he mentions in the book is the plagues that the Roman Empire suffered. That gave the opportunity to the church to reveal, the difference. Many times people ask, okay, what makes you different? Okay, you are a good person, I'm a good person. You love your family, I love my family. You are honest, I try to be honest. I mean, how do we differ as Christian? I mean, you claim you're a Christian, a born-again Christian, I'm not. I mean, but we're pretty much the same. So sometimes we need to go to this radically extreme situations so that the difference will be revealed. So, I mean, what Rodney Stark claims in that book is that the pagans, they were very afraid. They were throwing their sick relatives out in the streets, or they were just throwing the dead out in the streets because of the fear not to get the disease. But the Christians, because of this radical hope in the resurrection, they were the ones who would do these radical things, providing care. And so he was mentioning that is a contributing factor. So what does that mean for us today? We have a medical doctor in our board of elders who says, don't give wrong ideas to people, keep them safe at home. And he's right. And we shouldn't be foolish. But at the same time, I was reading in my devotions this morning, Esther 4, where, it's this challenge. I mean, what if that, God put us in this very particular moment in history for such a time as this? And there are challenges to that, aren't they? So we have a ministry for homeless people. And it's very interesting because the slogan all over Greece is stay at home. Okay, what does that mean for a homeless guy?
Yeah.
We're staying at home. So for us, this is a challenge, and we challenge ourselves. I mean, how as a church, deal with that? We have a homeless ministry, and so we are trying to figure out what is a safe. So we're going to be, people who are, healthy and reasonable. But how can we really not close our eyes to this challenge, but find... So one thing that we started doing is that outside, our church is one of the benefits of being at the heart of the city. I mean, the difficulty is you don't have parking. So it's always a big headache for us to park because our church is really at the heart of the city. But it's, on the other hand, it's really at the heart of the city. So what we do, we put bags with goodies outside the church for homeless people to come and pick them up, so at least they have something to eat. And we are trying, not to do our own thing, but we see what our city is doing for the homeless, and we encourage volunteers to go and help. And one of the most interesting, and sometimes, this is when you think, okay, a crisis brings this unique opportunity. So one of the things that the government closed down is all the brothels. Okay, so in Athens, and I get in Baltimore, it may be the same. We have trafficking is a huge problem in Athens. So you have a lot of people who have been victims of trafficking working in brothels. And now these people have no income and sometimes no place to stay. So one of the first things, I mean, there is a ministry connected with our church. I mean, several ministries that they deal with this challenge. Particularly, is calling us and says, you know, I have all these ladies who are calling me saying they don't have money to buy groceries, they cannot eat. Some of them they don't have a place to stay. So that's a new ministry that we have never envisioned. So we help some of these ladies buy groceries. We give them coupons for supermarkets, and some of them, you know, we have offered hospitality to stay with a lady from our church who is single, and she was willing to take them on. So there are these kind of unique opportunities.
Yeah, I would definitely say those are unique opportunities for sure.
Giotis, even though the current crisis is kind of filling everybody's mind, the reality is it's not going to last forever. And you guys have some longer range kind of things going on too. I'd love for our folks to hear a little bit about the church planting hub,
Yes.
and the connections with the church in the Balkans.
Yeah.
Share that with us.
Yes, yeah. Well, I always say that whatever is the question, the church is the answer. Like we need more healthy churches. That's the answer to whatever is the question. So when we had the refugee crisis, a lot of people were talking about, and I said, you know what? The key to really deal with the refugee crisis is to have healthy churches. Once you have that, these churches then will do what they're supposed to do. So even this crisis for us, is reinforcing the same thing, that we need healthy churches, many churches. I mean, the Lord has blessed our town, Athens. Like 10 years ago, we started with this vision of planting churches. Keep in mind that Greek evangelicals are a tiny minority. Let's give a generous number, 30,000 in a country of about 10 million. So 0.3%. So I'm saying that because we count numbers differently here. Okay, so you count by the hundreds and the thousands. For us, 1, 2, 3, it's a huge thing. And this is an introduction to say that by God's grace, we're able to plant several churches, not like a huge number of churches. 3 of them have been particularized right now, and they are active in their respective places in the city, and we have many other projects, initiatives in place. So 10 years after, we felt that perhaps now we have something to offer which goes beyond us and beyond Athens. So what is in our heart is to really work with the Balkans territory, and particularly, let me help you with geography here. We're talking about Albania, North Macedonia, Serbia, Bulgaria, Cyprus, and also the European part of Turkey, primarily Istanbul or Constantinople, as we call it. So this is kind of a territory that in many ways is connected. So we have history. We have shared history together. many times I use this analogy as like a family. You have the siblings rivalry, and now as you are locked in, you know, sometimes it's not an easy thing for the, you know, but we fight each other because we're a family. So in many ways, in the Balkans, we are interconnected. Even though we have a lot of differences, but still we're interconnected. And also with some of these Balkan countries, we have a very particular, good, yes, thank you.
Balkans, for everybody that is curious on their geography there. This
yes.
is Greece.
So I better say Southern Balkans then, because as you can see, we are leaving out Croatia, Bosnia, Montenegro, include now and Romania in some ways. I mean, it's part of it and it is not. Now, another interesting factor about the Balkans is that most of the Balkan countries, they share the Eastern Orthodox context. So North Macedonia, Montenegro, Bulgaria, Serbia, Romania, Cyprus, they're all, you know, Eastern Orthodox. I mean, the Serbians will be Serbian Orthodox and Romanian Orthodox, and on it goes. So somehow we share the same context. So it's not simply geography that we're neighbors, but we also culturally we're very quite the same. And also, church-wise, we are really at the same kind of level. So in most of these places, there is not a full-blown church planting movement in the cities. That's in North Macedonia, there are many new churches that have been planted, but there are small churches in small villages. But in Skopje, which is the capital, like North Macedonia is a country of about 2 million, and 1 million lives in Skopje, you know, like in the capital. And there are 10, 15 churches total. Same thing in Bulgaria, in Sofia, in most of other places, with the exception of Albania. In all of these places, what we want to provide is, first of all, is to provide inspiration, catalyzing church planting movements. How? Telling our story. Because it's a very different thing if you come from United States and you tell your story. I use this analogy many times. I say that most Americans suffer from the Steve Jobs syndrome. They like to, this kind of narratives that they say, I started in the garage of my home and now I own this multi-billion company. And you know, many narratives that come from the United States is that, you know, we started in the living room, 5 of us, 10 of us, and now we're 5, 10, 15,000, this mega church. And you realize that when you say this story to us, you mean it well, you want to encourage us, but actually you intimidate us, because we say, you know, okay, like us, like our situation after 150, 160 years of history, evangelicals in Greece, there are less than 30,000, less than one mega church in the States. So, but we have a different story to tell. I mean, and we live in the same kind of context, same challenges. And so we have experienced that is something that can really relate well with them. So what we are trying to do then is to make Athens a hub that will provide motivation, training, which is going to be contextual. In that, I need to tell you that we work very closely with City to City Europe, and now we have started City to City Balkans, which I coordinate, which basically it's, you know, the same thing.
City to City is the church planting network that has come out of Redeemer Presbyterian Church in New York City, which is Tim Keller's church. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Dan. And there is City to City Europe, but even there, you know, we come to realize that Europe is not one thing. And it's a mistake to assume that like Germany is the same thing like Italy, or the Netherlands or Sweden is the same thing like Greece or Bulgaria. You know, it's very, very different contexts. So we need to be more contextual in that sense. So that's something that we're trying to do as well. And in order to do it, we want to do a lot of research, think tanks, bring leaders from these countries to think together as to what exactly is our context, what exactly are the challenges that we are facing, and how, you know, all this good material and all this good experience that, you know, we have in our disposal from city to city and many other places, how that can be more useful and more contextual in our context. So what we want to run eventually is incubators who will get potential church planters from all of these countries from Southern Balkans, to have them in Athens for a period of time so that they can have a learning experience where we teach them, but also they visit the church plants, talk with people that they have done it. And so that's the vision that we have. We were kind of working full force towards that. Now with the coronavirus, we had to step back and reflect. But I have visited already Albania. I had in my plans to visit Bulgaria, which I'm not, Cyprus, and many other places. So there is a growing interest, but we have many contacts with all these people.
Giotis, can you talk a little bit the letter that you received from the guy in Cyprus? I think that was just so key. If I'm remembering it right, he said, "Okay, I understand why we need to plant churches. Like, we get that. We want to, and we have the desire. We want to see the church growing. We want to plant churches, but we don't know how."
That was exactly my question 10 years ago. Because keep in mind that, I'm 52. In my life, I have till I was 40 something, I have never seen a church being planted in my life. Okay. So, all right. I mean, who wouldn't like new churches to be planted? But I'm going back to the Stephen Jobs analogy. Many times, it's okay. Things like that happen in the United States, somehow, I don't know. But what about us? So I remember I had the exact same question, like in our experience, we came out of the 2004 Olympics, and I have done anything I knew, like many different projects, evangelistic projects, and everything was really successful. But at the end of the day, when it came to the question, what was the gospel impact in the city? The answer, unfortunately, it was none, or nothing significant. So that got me into struggling and praying and searching. And through many different providential ways, I got in touch with Redeemer Presbyterian Church. And that it was not like a magical thing that, when I say I got in touch with Redeemer, means that I got in touch with a lot of writings, thinking, arguments. And for a number of years, for about 2-3 years, I was struggling with all these questions. So then you come to that point that you say, well, I'm convinced that church planting is the way. But then you come to this question, how?
Yeah, right.
Okay, I mean, what is the manual and how you do that? I mean, and we have gone through that recently. So that's the key. So I think what we want to provide to them is exactly, through our experience. And when I say our experience is not, I mean, we're still learning. And many times I say there's nothing to be triumphalistic. Everything is so fragile, not only in Greece, but I would say in the whole, continent of Europe. It's a new movement. But, we have some experience now that we can help people, like this guy in Cyprus. And also, I remember when I communicated with with this brother in Bulgaria, who was really, he told me, and I said, you know what? I mean, I knew him, and he's the associate pastor in a large church in Sofia, and I shared with him this vision, and he said, you know, I cannot tell you how many years we were praying for something like that to happen, because we do need churches in the city. So this is what we're trying to focus. You know, nobody can be anything and everything. So the idea is to say, you know, what are the key cities in Southern Balkans? Let's work with the church to help them, you know, grow. Now, we have many contacts already. We hosted last November a conference in Athens. Patrick is sending questions. He doesn't want to stop me, so he sends on the chat. That's why I'm trying to read.
This is like water. It's like drink this
Okay.
up. This is great.
All right. I'll you know, let me then first say this. What are the key cities that we have in mind? Obviously, when we talk about Albania, is Tirana, which is the capital. So we are primarily focusing there. Now, there's something interesting in Albania. Albania, I mean, the oldest Protestant church is 30 years old. Can you think about it? I mean, because it was a closed country, and then it opened. So the oldest that you encounter there is, so it's a very young and fresh movement with all the blessings and the challenges that something like that has. So they're striving for maturity. So there you have this phenomenon. I don't remember the exact number, but they have more than 150. It's a huge number considering the size of the country. A huge number of Campus Crusade staff workers. So they do a tremendous work in Albanians, in the universities. Now, of course, all these people, they were doing evangelism in the universities. Now, this generation is kind of growing older, and so you have new believers, and what you need to do, you need to form churches. So a lot of Campus Crusade crew, staff workers, now they're transitioning to becoming church planters. Mm. So it's interesting that they do that. So there's a growing movement there. But the question is there, how exactly do we do that? So
that's
they
why you
need
need
training.
a process. That's why you need an incubator. That's
exactly. Exactly. So they actually, this is a case that they came to us. They came to City Europe. And they said they told us that, we're looking for a network to get training and coaching and a context. And, after studying different models, we said, okay, city to city, that fits better with us. So in Albania, we have been invited, so to say. So I was there and I attended and I spoke in a conference. There were about 150 people. And there must have been at least 80 to 90 young church planters there. Mm. And all of them, as I said, most of them used to be Campus Crusade staff workers who are now transitioning and they're doing church planning. So that's an opportunity there. In North Macedonia, I mean, we call it North Macedonia. That's like in Balkans, it's very politically sensitive area. So you need to be very careful how
I was going to say, Giotis, you talk about the context and how, you all, the importance of you all doing some of this training is, these things that we just don't know. And so anyway,
that which is true, and it's even when we disagree, we know why, and we know what are the sensitive issues. So in North Macedonia, as I said, is primarily like the main city, Skopje, which is the capital, and as I said, at least 50% of the population lives there. In Serbia, Belgrade would be the capital. Again, in Belgrade, there are just a few churches, not that many, 10, 15, 20, like a very small number of churches. And unfortunately, in all these places, in the cities, as I said, in North Macedonia, there is a movement that planted many churches, 30, 40 churches, which is an amazing number. But all of these, most of these churches would be, as I said, small churches in rural and places in villages. So again, the emphasis for us is, okay, how you help, and we have very good contacts there as well in North Macedonia. In Serbia, Belgrade is the capital, and again, there we have some good connections, but also there are two significant cities, one in the south and one in the north. In the north, there is this city called Novi Sad. In the south, there is another city called Niš. Now, Serbia is almost like the top part would be more multi-ethnic. The top bottom would be very Orthodox, Serbian Orthodox. So in many ways, we would like to focus on Niš because this is a context where not that many churches exist. Like in Novi Sad, I was there last summer, and I taught, there is a Bible college there, and I taught a course on Eastern Orthodoxy in Novi Sad. And if I remember well, there are 6, 7, 10 churches in that large city as well. So then we go to Bulgaria. Again, the key city there is Sofia. Of course, there are other cities, significant cities, but we'll start in Sofia. And we have some very good connections there, as I said. In Turkey, it's Constantinople. It's a huge mega city, millions and millions. And then in Cyprus, you need to go down and to your right.
Over here, it's like
yes.
Over here.
Yeah, somewhere there. Cyprus is a small island. It has a long history. I mean, there is a part in Cyprus that they speak Greek, and it's part of the European Union. And so this is sort of the context that we have in mind.
To have churches planted all over this region, gospel-centered, native guys. Where would the hub be for people to get this training? Would it take place in
Athens?
Okay.
Yeah. That'll be in Athens. So that is the idea, because the key thing when you do training is not just like doing seminars or lectures. Is for people to actually visit with Tim and Alex in Exarchia and just talk to them, see how they have done it, and then go to. So at least in Athens, we have some examples where people go and experience firsthand that.
What would be your first? Do you have 2 or 3 guys that are your first?
Actually, yeah, I think our problem would be who to leave out, because I don't think we can have more than 10 people. And I mean, we have people from Greece whom we would like to train, but we have many people from Albania who are eager and waiting for that. So one of the ideas, that's why we're talking about a church planting movement, is not only to have cohorts of incubators, but also host a regional conference. So hopefully once every year. So the idea is once every year to bring back all the people who have been trained. So once a year for all of us to come together, share where we are, share our experiences. So I think this is a way to really build up a movement which is beyond our city, our country, but it's more regional.
Giotis, can I just jump in and say, I think for in an American context, where we are so inundated with conferences and resources, and it's so hard for us to understand what it's like to be a pastor, a church planter, even an evangelical church member in your context. But having a once a year conference where people can come. That may be the only time they get together, they have any interaction with people outside of their little, 15, 20 people that they're planting a church together with for encouragement in the gospel. And that can be so life-giving. And I think it's hard for us to understand because we just don't get that.
It is. I was, a few weeks ago, like a couple of months ago, I was in a church in Alabama. And they asked me to talk to high school students. And I mean, like in a Christian high school, okay? So I asked them, okay, can you try to put yourself in the situation that you are the only evangelical, not in your classroom, not in your year, but in your entire school. So this is our kids when they go to the public school. That's their experience. So the idea of being together with others is a totally different dynamic. It's not a luxury. It's a survival for us to really understand that we are together in all of that. So it's not a conference just to have fun and just to edify ourselves. And actually, even beyond that, which is a real need, it's a tool to build up a movement. So because this is not going to be like an open conference, just, okay, we're doing a conference, come. We use it conference for a lack of a better term. The idea is to bring potential candidates so that will be exposed and inspired to the idea, and also to bring back all the people who have gone through the program and now they're out there ministering, planting churches, to bring them back, because we do believe that this interaction creates the context for the development of a movement. And we do, believe in movements. I think it's a key thing. So it's not a thing here and there, but collectively, I think that brings a different dynamic.
Well, hey, Giotis, how can we pray for you? How can we support you through this?
Yeah, I think for I always say to people that there are two main things to pray for me and for our movement here in Greece is our families, the first one, and relationships. Because the way we do ministry here, so even when we talk about planting, is not that we train this guy, he goes out to plant the church, and then we say goodbye, we'll see you like next year or something. Everything is really interconnected, everything is interrelated. And of course, we're human beings, sinful human beings with selfishness and pride. And so for God to really bring humility in our relationships, I think that is a key element. I always say that the most noble virtue in ministry is to rejoice with those who rejoice, especially to rejoice with God's blessing on the church next door, especially when God chooses not to bless you the way you expected. So these are challenges. And so I would say relationships and also our families, especially the young church planters. We're grateful to the Lord because we have now a new generation of church planters coming up. So they have young children, or they're newlywed, and so there are particular challenges there.
Well, can we just pray to that end?
Yeah, please.
All right. Dear Father, we thank you for the gospel that's on the move in Greece and beyond, even Lord, into the Balkans, and Lord, in places where everyone is a minority that is a believer in Christ, and Lord, and yet in spite of that, God, you are on the move. And Lord, so I pray for this movement of church planting going on out of Athens, Lord, that you would begin a work of renewal in these countries, Father. Lord, as I listen to Giotis, Lord, I just want to lift up our families, God, as we are now integrated in ways in which we would not have predicted a month ago, Lord. I pray that that you would give us wisdom to not only share the gospel but our lives as well with one another, Lord. That the reality of Thessalonians 2:8 would just would be evident, God, and our greatest desire, Father, is that out of this opportunity you've given us, Lord, that the gospel would be proclaimed among our communities and our neighborhood, Lord, that through our families, through our churches, through just our care for our neighbors, Lord, that you would be lifted high. And so, Father, help us to take advantage of this by faith and to really love those you place on our path well. And Lord, for the young church planters who may be wrestling with anxiety and stress and just the brokenness of this world, and Lord, just even thinking about, God, just the wine running out, Jesus, that, Lord, I pray that you would pour out your Spirit during this time, that people who have been inoculated to the reality of death, Lord, would be awakened to the reality of the frailty of human life. And God, that this would be an opportunity for the church to grow and flourish and speak into the culture of fear and anxiety. And so, Father, be with Giotis, Lord, as he leads this and directs the church. Give him wisdom, protect him and his family, Lord. And I pray that, God, you would give him an outward face. And I pray that for us as well, Lord, as every day is a new reality. Help us to figure out how to love you and love our neighbors well in this space, Lord. I pray for just good phone conversations and, Lord, opportunities to grow. And would you protect us, Lord, from ever feeling like you're not there, Lord, just as you promised the disciples, you'd be with them, you're with us now. And may we just give you thanks for that. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Giotis,
Thank you.
Wonderful to see you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We love you. Give our love to Nopi and your family.
I will.
Your boys are your boys all home now?
Two, our third, he lives on his own in his apartment, but it seems that he will come back to stay with us because of the situation, because he needs to eat.
Yeah.
And so we need to take permission even to go outside, to go in the grocery and come back. So that's our situation now.
Wow.
So most probably he'll come back. Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Well, we look, any way we can encourage and support you guys, we want to be able to do that. Thanks for taking the time with us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, guys. I really appreciate that.
We'll put this on the internet. So thank you.
All right.
All right.
Okay, guys. Blessings. Bye-bye.
Bye.